Everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to the show. We have a very special guest, Dr. Stephanie, SG, Dr. Stephanie Derbelerb. You guys might know her in different capacities, and she happens to be my boss, my wife, my queen. Welcome to the show, Dr. Steph.
Thank you.
Welcome. Today's podcast is on what to expect after expecting, combating pelvic floor pain and incontinence. Now, this is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people.
Very embarrassing for a lot of women. A lot of women are afraid to even admit that they have a problem.
Yes, that is 100% true. So now, what I want to do is I want to help people out there understand what that means. Maybe they're going through it, or maybe they're pregnant now and they want to know what to expect afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So people who might be having this, people who have it, and some people don't know that there are communities out there and that there are solutions for these people.
Yes.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing to know is, I think for so long, it's been just accepted. Maybe your mother or your grandmother have talked about giving birth, and they've just, always pee a little when they cough, or, they just kind of accepted this idea that there might be a little bit of urine leakage, on occasion. And I feel like the old generation is just like, yeah, I've had a baby. That's just kind of what happens. And that is not normal. And that can absolutely be combated, and you can absolutely do things to help that, if not completely fix it.
So can you simplify this for me? Why does this exist? Why does pelvic floor pain and incontinence exist after delivering? I mean, you don't have to go into like the anatomy or anything else, but like in general, why is that the case?
It does help to understand the anatomy a little bit. Imagine your body cavity as a can, right? You have your diaphragm on the top, you have your pelvic floor on the bottom, and your core muscles are the sides of the can. And if any one of those sides are weakened because of the weight of a baby in the belly, you don't have to necessarily have had a vaginal birth to experience pelvic floor issues. Sometimes cutting through the abdominal wall, having that cesarean surgery, and then that wall of the can is compromised, your pelvic floor gets stressed extra because the can is not completely solid. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. And for those of you who are watching on our YouTube channel, you'll see kind of, she was giving me some,
sorry, I talk with my hands a lot.
So some hand gestures, but, and for those listening on the podcast, ultimately, imagine like a Coke bottle, and the top of it, you have a top and a bottom, and then it's circular around. But basically you're increasing the pressure on the bottom of the can. And so you have expansion and pushing on that pelvic floor, and the pelvic floor is muscle.
It is, it's a muscle.
So imagine, somebody pushing on your like bicep muscle, like, and expanding it to a certain point, it stretches, and that muscle stays in a certain length. And so it's hard for it to come back to that length after, 9 months of challenges, trauma, so 100% it is that it is a muscular challenge a lot of times. Pelvic floor pain can be, there's a lot of reasons for pelvic floor pain.
And a lot of people think that the only thing that can happen to your pelvic floor is it gets stretched out, or it becomes too loose, or it doesn't get activated. And I think there's a really big population out there that also are dealing with that pelvic floor spasming after trauma, after labor, and the muscles actually being too tight. And so people, I know women who've been doing Kegels, the Kegel exercises, to try to strengthen that area. And they're actually making their specific problem worse because they had too tense muscles in the pelvic floor. And that's been the cause of their problem. So it doesn't always have to be that the problem is the muscles are too loose or not activating.
Yeah. So, and I, you'll see this if you ever on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, and you look up pelvic floor pain or incontinence, what you'll realize is more people, and it's a really bad way to put this, but most people are selling that it's weakness and you have to strengthen. I'll tell an interesting story that I used to work as a student. My one of my small rotations was through a hospital that would see women who were raped, and they would see them in the emergency room. And we, as a community, this was in St. Louis, they had a program where they could see physical therapists who were pelvic floor if they needed that resource. And what people don't realize is I know we understand it's trauma, but it's trauma.
It's physical and mental trauma.
Yes. And a lot of times there could be pelvic pain because of that. And there's different types of pelvic floor pain and incontinence reasons. And so I know today we're talking about pregnancy and everything else, but there's different levels of pelvic floor pain. And so today we're talking about after expecting. And so we acknowledge that for the majority of cases, it's an expansion of muscle, maybe some weakness, and maybe they're not letting go too much. And that's very normal. Is that correct?
It's very normal, but very fixable.
Oh, there we go. I think that's important for listeners out there to understand, is that it is very helpable, right? Maybe you might not get 100% complete resolution, but for anybody who has experienced this, 20% improvement is better than no percent improvement. Or maybe you enjoy running and it only comes on when you're completely fatigued, or after running 5 miles, that's when it's happened. If we can extend that to 7, 8, I mean, that improves everybody. Or you enjoy jump roping, you enjoy any form of activity that requires pressure to the bottom of that soda can or that pelvic floor, you're going to stress it. And that's when most people find it, right? So maybe you're a runner and the impact going up and down does it, jump roping does it, jumping does it, or bearing down, sneezing, coughing, it pushes on the bottom of the floor. So anytime you have that, that's when you're going to get it. And it is helpable.
Yes.
It is helpable.
Yes.
So
like any muscle, you need to train those muscles to turn on. And you have to understand, it's not like, oh, I've gotten them to turn on, they're perfectly good to go now. It's like any other muscle in the body. It takes time to develop not only the strength, but also the endurance, right? So your quads might be strong enough to run a mile, but maybe not 5. You have to also understand that the pelvic floor might be able to stabilize awesome for 10 minutes, but maybe 15 minutes is, the point where you need to work on it. So don't feel like it's an all or nothing fix. There's definitely an endurance component to it. So you might be able to do, speaking from personal experience, you might be able to do 15 double unders at a time. And so you need to stop, take a break, breathe, reset, and go again. Because from speaking from personal experience, I've noticed that after I've had 3 children now, and I've noticed that for me, it took a while to build that strength back up in my pelvic floor. And I couldn't do 100 double unders like I could pre-pregnancy, but it's not like I couldn't do them at all. I just had to know where my limit was. And I've been working on getting that time up, if that makes sense.
For those listeners who don't know what a double under is, it's and I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm literally, there are some people who are not familiar with the terminology. And it just means you jump rope 2 times in one jump, right? So it's a double.
So you jump higher.
You jump higher and you get 2 spins across one jump rope. I know that a lot of people know that. I just want to clarify. The other piece I wanted to ask as well and discuss is that how do you minimize how weak or how much stress you apply immediately after delivering? And does that improve your outcomes or lessen your risk? And the reason why, we've had clients and we've had friends who've done this, they go in too soon. And now I am an advocate for exercising. I mean, if you're delivering and you want to go exercise the next day, that might not be the best move, but I understand that a lot of people love fitness and that's a part of their life and they want to be able to get back to that. Now, there's a lot of layers on this. After delivering, there's different priorities. You need nutrition, you need rest, you need recovery. And when you exercise, think of exercise as stress. We think of it as a positive thing, but exercise is stress to our body. It has no idea of the positive benefits. The positive benefits become when we become more resilient, we build strength. So I think when you have trauma in the pelvic floor, and then you add stress on top of that right after delivering, you're almost contributing to the problem.
Yes, correct. It's overstressing it even more, and it doesn't really have a chance to recover.
So if you would say after delivery, what would your recommendations be? Now, and we're trying to, there's runners, there's hikers, there's swimmers, there's bikers, there's Orange Theory, there's F45, there's CrossFit. There's so many variations to exercise. Can we just give a generic guideline? I know that sounds really tough. This is Stephanie's like worst nightmare. She wants to go specific. And so can we go general, like what is it?
All right. So my biggest advice for women who are pregnant or trying to get pregnant, know that this is going to be something in the future that you want to approach so that you have the best outcome, right? For yourself, for your child, for every aspect of your life. What I would suggest is I have a handful of exercises that I give people who ask me. But there are exercises that you can do that are really simple. You don't have to go out and run. You can do things like bridges, core activation exercises that are really, really basic, hip stretches. There's a handful of exercises that I really, really recommend doing, honestly, the day after you give birth, because they're so easy, but you have to master that. And core contraction, breathing during core contraction, the breath is so important. That's a whole nother, we'll get to that too. But there's so many things that you have to master first before you can go back to your chosen activity of choice.
And an easy way to see that, anybody who's ever had surgery or known anybody who's had surgery in the past, that after surgery, you can't expect to get back to what you were doing the next day. Not possible. So for most people, after surgery, now we're not just talking about pregnancy or delivery. After any surgery, it takes at least 4 to 6 weeks to allow scars to heal, allow your body to, develop the appropriate inflammation decrease, and for you to just get your general sense of like walking and general movement and get your motor patterns again. And that's the same with delivery. Like in my world,
you have to let the healed part scar down and heal first before you add significant stress to it. So that's why I suggest really, really simple movement, nothing that stresses the area, whether it's a C-section or a vaginal birth, it doesn't matter. You have to let everything heal and come back to its normal size.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that don't exercise. Your definition is the challenge here, right? So if your form of exercise is run a marathon, you're definitely weeks to months away from doing that, or even starting that. Now, because of the impact and the pressure to the pelvic floor, the bottom of the can. Now, if you enjoy yoga, that might have some, because of the breathing and intra-abdominal pressure, that might be a challenge as well. If you like swimming, these are all different questions that you're going to have to get specific answers with a healthcare professional to help you. But in general, we recommend that people don't go full return until at least 4 to 6 weeks. And you should, your OBGYN and everybody else behind it, like that's your real team. They're going to give the guidelines. And we as a fitness and medical industry, we're just here to support those guidelines. We don't override anything because we weren't in that event. We weren't in the delivery. We don't know what happened. There's so many layers. And so for us, these are guidelines to help with anybody. So think of 4 to 6 weeks of doing some of these exercises that you talked about, core activation.
And it's mostly, honestly, it's mostly controlling your breath as you're doing simple things like posterior pelvic tilts while you're laying on a bed.
Sure.
Very, very easy things, but it goes back to that can that I was talking about. The diaphragm is the top of the can.
Right.
And if that lid of the can is spasming, or you have to hold your breath to make everything else work, it's not functioning at its best. So you have to conquer the diaphragm breathing. You have to conquer your breath first, and be able to control your breath while you're doing exercises before you can move on to the next harder step.
100%. So understand that you're not completely resting. I don't think absolute rest is needed. I think moving and doing normal stuff, but also then instead of allowing that weakened area to just rest, I think you can do some basic things like you're talking about to help. You're helping it get ready for the stage.
Prepping.
And you're prepping. That's a great word. And that's what you have to see it. You're not actually physically stressing it. You're prepping it so that way it's ready. When you hit the ground running with exercise, it's ready to take on that demand. And what people don't understand is that pressure, that new muscle or that muscle that was stretched is now weakened and lengthened. And now they have to kind of build that back up. And then you can exercise. Most people skip the foundational step.
Then they do nothing for 6 weeks. They get the clearance from their OBGYN and then they go run. And you're like, what? No, you missed the foundation.
Worst thing you can do for yourself. And I know we're gonna get some comments. I know we're gonna get some feedback. Well, I did this and 100%. But what we're talking about is the general population out there. There's a lot of outliers and there's a lot of incredible humans. Good for you if you exercise the week after and you had no problems. But we're talking about the majority of people in the middle of the bell curve who have the challenges. And that's you, the listeners, that's you guys. And we're really trying to help you. Ultimately, if you've had this in the past, now you can identify where the challenge was. There's still solutions. We'll talk about that next. But ultimately, if you're pregnant or you know you're going to get pregnant in the future, one of the best things you can do is prep the pelvic floor afterwards, get some basic strengthening, and then get ready to be able to exercise in that 4 to 6 week mark, listening to your OBGYN. So that way, when you do, you have a less of a risk of this happening to you. Now, we can't control pelvic pain that happened during the event. Now, that's a different style of treatment that we do as physical therapists that does exist, and that's case by case. But we want to really talk about the pelvic floor and really what happens afterwards. Now, can we talk about somebody who's had, they had pregnancy, they had delivery 2 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever, and they still continue to have challenges. Now, that's a different subset of people. So let's help those people. What are potential solutions? How do you, now it's not too late. You've gone past that point.
It's definitely not too late.
You didn't know the information, you exercise, and now you continue to have challenges. What's the solutions now?
So like any muscle, if you stop using it or you don't know how to reactivate it, and then you add time on top of that, it's going to get very weak and almost really, really difficult to turn back on. That would be any muscle. The pelvic floor is not an exception. And it's even harder because sometimes it's really hard to tell if you're even activating the right muscles. So having little tricks, like there's little things, little cues, like you can take a towel.
That's right.
You take a towel and roll it up. And you can sit on it like you're sitting on a bicycle seat. And as you do a Kegel, you should be able to feel your pelvic floor lift up away from the towel. And what feedback you're getting or what your body's trying to sense is the feeling of your skin pulling away from the towel. So there's ways to tell if you're turning that muscle on, and sometimes it's really hard to activate it. But there are exercises, there are tricks that you can utilize to help.
And I want to clarify one thing. I think a lot of people, and just know there's different options. Most people are fearful or doubtful of seeing somebody for these things because they're embarrassed or they didn't know. So I'm a male. My wife is a beautiful female. And now what I mean by that, sometimes they don't know that the gender doesn't matter. We can both help. We can both help and know that it's a skill set. It has nothing to do with, I've never experienced that. But what I do know is I have the knowledge and the anatomy awareness to be able to progress somebody to help them. So just know that there are specialists in this. I am not a specialist, but a lot of physical therapists have had experience with these things and they can help you. You just have to ask. You have to inquire. Now, if somebody was going to inquire at a facility, what are some questions that they might look for maybe on the website, or if they called in, what are some things that are helpful for them to ask or know prior to going in? What do you think?
Oh, that's a good question.
So I'm a consumer, and now I want to know who can help me here. And maybe I've Googled it, or maybe like what are some keywords I can Google? And then when I do find a place, what type of questions can I ask before I go in? Because I want to make sure I'm not wasting my time, and I don't want to tell somebody my whole story and they can't help me. What do you think? I'm putting it on the spot. What do you got?
Like what questions to ask the therapist?
Let's start with Google.
Or
what would you Google? What keywords?
Pelvic floor pain.
Okay.
Incontinence.
Yeah.
Physical therapy after birth.
Boom. That's probably, I think that's a good one. So like, therapy or rehab. Yeah.
There's some things that, this is another topic that people I think are embarrassed to bring up, and so they don't,
right,
is pain with sex after pregnancy or after birth.
Yes.
This goes back to the idea that pelvic floor is too tense and too tight. Right. And like having a tight upper trap muscle, if someone hits that or pinches that too hard, it's gonna hurt.
Right.
So there's ways that you can get that muscle to relax, whether it's massage, self-massage techniques, or even honestly, de-stressing exercises or breathing exercises in painful moments that can help a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you said,
sorry, I got off track.
Physical therapy for, pelvic pain, physical therapy, pelvic floor physical therapy. I think it's a big one. Pelvic floor physical therapy. If you Google that, you YouTube that, and then type in your city plus San Diego, you're going to find specialists. You're going to find blogs, just like this one. Maybe you found this podcast or this blog, and know that one, they're talking about it. Number two, they probably have information about that. And the first step you can do is, a lot of these companies will have free reports or ebooks on like where to start, right? Yes. Some people are very hesitant. They're like, can I just start here, please? Maybe I listened to this podcast. Maybe I did a YouTube. Maybe I did a free ebook. Then you can take that next step and maybe call them and ask, okay, do you have anybody who works with people who have pelvic floor? First thing you can do, ask that front desk. Do you guys have it? Or go onto the bios. Some people don't specialize in it and don't take that for, they don't know what to do.
Correct.
And it might not be on their bio. So the best thing you can do, like on all of our bios, I don't think we stress that we are pelvic floor specialists, but we could definitely help. So one thing you can do is call, ask, hey, do you guys have anybody who can help with pelvic floor pain or pelvic pain after pregnancy? And they can point you in that right direction. I think it's a good place to start. Now, what I wouldn't do, try and do this on your own. And then now you're 3 months out.
And now it's harder.
Now it's harder. You have time lost. And now you have more trauma and stress and scarring and inflammation on an already affected area. So I don't want to create urgency, but I would get solutions faster than you think. And the reason why is because timing is of the essence with these type of cases. If you know that maybe you're pregnant now, or you're going to get pregnant, one cool thing is to partner with a healthcare professional now.
Yes.
Like, believe it or not, pre-pregnant or in pregnancy is a great way to like minimize the weakness and everything else.
I know people who have had that appointment already set up for 6 weeks after they were planning on giving birth. They already had it scheduled and ready to go.
They know what they're doing.
Knew exactly what they wanted to have done.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really good tip. So start before that.
Okay. And then you're seeing the professional, not because you have a problem, but because you're expecting there to be an activation issue, or you're expecting, you just want someone to make sure that you're good to go.
I think the more I treat individuals, the more I help people find solutions, the more I understand. Most people think of things in a short journey, like, well, I'm just going to deliver this and then I'm going to go into exercise. I'm starting to see now there's more of a journey, and then you're just in the middle of it. And the sooner you can see that, what I mean by that is, what's the next stage is what you have to asking. The pregnancy, the delivery is not the end stage. The next is, what do I need to do to prevent everything that just is going to be traumatized here? What do I need to do to get it back? And then how do I safely go back to exercise? And then how long will it take me to get onto that marathon? And then after that marathon, how many more triathlons can I do? Like, so when you see this long journey, you see that the solutions are just segments. They're just time points for you to achieve versus I'm gonna wait and see. The wait and see athlete or the wait and see person will get the wait and see results. And I'm saying
It's
that
not a plan.
respectfully.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't have a plan. And the more we help our community and thousands of people, the more I realize this more and more. If you can see the plan, it's so much easier. Now, for those of you who have the pain or incontinence or challenges post-pregnancy, that's a different story, right? There was no map, there was no plan. It doesn't mean anything bad. Just know the first step is knowing that you're normal. I just want to tell you,
you're normal, and there is something you can be doing about it.
Yeah. The more I realize that, like, first, it's normal to feel this way, and it's not taboo, and it is real, and there are solutions, and we can help you with that. And like I said, maybe you don't have every single website biography telling you that they're specialists. Physical therapists can definitely help with this. Now, there's 100% there's specialists in it. There are some people who dedicate and devote their careers to this. Now, those are people that you're probably you want to look for those people. And now, if you're looking for somebody who can help you with that and get back to exercise and transition you safely and help you with your back pain and help you with your sacroiliac pain or your joint pain or your hip pain or your knee pain that has developed from pregnancy, or maybe you got carpal tunnel now that you're feeding, and you have neck pain from being rolled over, and you have back pain from breastfeeding. I mean, we understand that. So
there are so many more injuries that are possible.
So what happens is the pelvic pain is just the start of it all. I promise you, I've been through this and I know it, and we help people. Here's what happens. Pelvic pain, incontinence. But you also have back pain or SIJ pain, or you have, hip pain, and then you develop knee pain because there was extra weight for a little while. And you have neck pain and maybe carpal tunnel from feeding, and you have mid back pain because you've been hunched over breastfeeding. Now, what happens is the pelvic pain was just one of those. And what we do understand is there's layers upon trauma and the responsibilities associated with all of this. And just know, the pelvic pain, most people don't talk about that. They'll talk about the back pain and everything else. But just know there are solutions to that, and safely getting back to exercise, there's a progression for that.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. So just know there are answers. The team at Sports Performance can definitely help. We do it all the time. We have a lot of people who come to see us, whether you're an athlete or not. I don't care. If you move, you're an athlete. Like that's just the name of the game. And don't ever think that you're different. We're all the same. We all have challenges. The challenge is who wants to take that next step to find the solution. And you can YouTube all you want. You can podcast all you want. You can do Google all you want. At some point, you're just delaying the inevitable to just ask for help, because that's the thing I hear all the time. I waited so long. I just wish I would have done this sooner. Like, if I can just get one thing into you guys, help the person. Maybe you have friends or family. Just tell them, like, send them this podcast, send them this blog, whatever it is, just send it to them, and just know that there's solutions out there. I'm obsessed with helping the community, both local and far and wide. And the first step is awareness that it's normal and it's helpable. And step 2 is committing to somebody who can help you with that and planning that next step, so you can be on that roadmap back to fitness. Would you agree with that?
I love it. Yeah.
Good. All right. So that is the podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you from our family and the Sports Performance family. We love and miss you guys wherever you're listening to this podcast. I know we have listeners in Australia and other countries. And for our San Diego community, we appreciate you guys so much. And we're so honored to continue to help you and beyond, and your kids and your grandkids and everybody else. So we hope that your solutions are found in your pelvic floor pain or any incontinence, and that we can continue to help your friends and your family. So on behalf of the entire sports performance team and family and the Garcias, we'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care.
Bye.